One of the things that I think about, and I know it's not specific to Appalachia necessarily, is food.
Yeah.
And I spent most of my time with my grandma in the kitchen. And that is so critical to me. And I think it's critical to building relationships.
Yes.
When I was with my great aunts and uncles, we were always seated at the kitchen table and had been either cooking and eating or going out to eat and coming home and hanging out together. And I think about that too, just the process of cooking and building that relationship over whatever it is, the stove, the fire, the kitchen, of some sort.
Really
that I don't think a lot of people today are really doing that.
Yes.
Harmeyer's grocery store. Okay. And they'd go there every Friday. Everybody went, and they'd get all the food for the whole week. My dad worked as that back in the day. That's when we got our milk delivered to the house, and that's when we got the bread. My dad sold rainbow bread, so he took rainbow bread to the grocery stores, and that's what's his job, And so every couple weeks or so in the summertime, when he was finished, we'd all get in the rainbow bread truck, and it would make a lot of noise because the empty racks would jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. And we'd go to Old Coney because he'd drop us off there because the rainbow bread place was close by. And Mom would have supper made and everything, and we'd go there and have supper, and we got one ticket to ride one ride. So that was really pretty cool. So
it was just a wonderful life. It was being on a farm. We always had a garden and other crops, so we always had food.
Yeah.
We may not have had lots of things, but we always had food, and we always had love.
When I was growing up, I didn't realize I was Appalachian. I remember I went to school. I'll never forget this, because for years I wouldn't eat beans. Not touch a bean. Because I heard a kid say, only poor people eat beans. But I knew every Wednesday, we were going to have beans, potatoes, cornbread, and some kind of meat, pork chop, whatever. Well, I went home and I refused to eat. Well, that didn't sit well with my dad. He said, well, then you won't eat. This isn't a restaurant. I didn't eat beans for years because I thought only poor people eat them. By far, we were poor, but not really poor.
Beans, and it would be like a feast. But there was
It didn't have to be filet mignon. It was the tomatoes and the soup beans. And as you were talking, I think of how food was central to, I love you, I'm taking care of you. Even if it was the last morsel we had. The most generous people I've ever met are those who have struggled to have food.
I would go outside and climb trees, and I would collect plants and make pretend salads with them.
I make the salad too now.
And
me and Aubrey used to do that too, so it must run in the family a little.
I remember. Oh, you would have all these great food items.
Yes.
Like algae from the pond or something. I remember. Grandma Nancy, when she told me when she was little, made a salad out of poison ivy.
Who'd you give that to, Grandma?
Oh, I tell you. It's a wonder I even lived through it.
Mom would always grow a garden. We eventually, towards the latter half of my life, I was in I started ninth grade. We moved to the Eastgate area, which is where my mom currently lives. And when we moved to Eastgate, we had enough property that they would always have a garden every year. So my mom, I got to see her raise fresh vegetables and bring those in and can those and put those up for the winter. And
my school lunches is how I knew things were different. So I don't know if we would have qualified for government benefits, but my family would never have applied, right? That was just something we didn't do. So my lunches didn't look like other kids' lunches, right? So we would have like a piece of cornbread or Vienna sausages in a can.
Yeah.
Like, I remember other kids would look at that. Like, I knew something was weird about our family because of school lunches.
Yeah.
That's when I first started recognizing my school lunch looked different than other people's school lunches.
And they had their own, self-sustaining. Grandma never really talked about going to the store or anything. They had chickens, and she would talk about how they'd have to kill those to eat. Pretty sure they grew vegetables. I don't know. I mostly remember her talking about chickens.
My gosh, I remember it was like I wake up to this wonderful, we'd have ham and bacon and sausage and biscuits and gravy and eggs and grits and the whole thing. That's where my great grandfather would eat gravy and tomatoes. And that's where I got my love. I believe that's where I got my love of food. That kind of food.
Grandma, I would go stay with her in the summertime, and Granny Rose, and so she raised chickens and pigs, and she had a cow. But like growing up, I would spend the summers in Kentucky with my grandma, my Granny Rose, or some of my aunts. But the one thing I remember, we would get up really early. We would go gather the eggs and milk the cows and bring that in, and she would churn butter on her porch. She had like a hand churner. So we would always have fresh butter, and she would make big cat eye biscuits with red eye gravy from the ham. And so those are just all smells. I can smell the breakfast cooking at the moment.
In apple season, you were always doing something for food. Exactly. Right? And that's even living in modern times. Mm-hmm. We always were doing something around food. Mm-hmm. Cooking, cooking, making cornbread. Cornbread will always be a staple in my life. And I mean, I didn't know, I only knew there was Wonder Bread and cornbread. I remember when I got married, my husband at the time pulled out wheat bread. I had no idea. That's bad. I had never seen that. It was Wonder Bread.